Welcome back to the North American Eternal Weekend Vintage Champs. We are here bringing you our semifinals matchup. We've got the top four for you, and we're going to play and watch both of our matches. But before we do, let's take a look at our sponsors for the weekend. As you know, Card Titan, they bring you this whole event, and they have a 10% off discount for you for the weekend. Eternal Weekend 2023 is the code. They're this month. GameGenic, also a sponsor for this event, also with a similar discount, 10%, and the same code, Eternal Weekend 2023. We thank them for their help in putting on this wonderful event. So we are coming into our semifinal bracket, and as we said right at the end of last round, we've got it's all Oath and all jewel shops all the time for the rest of this top 8. We have a mirror match now for jewels that we're going to start with, and then we're going to go over to the other side of the bracket, which is jewel versus Oath. Steve, I mean, you said it earlier that the jewel deck is so explosive. You got to feel like jewel is the odds-on favorite, not just numerically, but also in terms of power here.
Well, it's a foot race, and these decks are just so explosive developmentally, that they can just overwhelm you very, very quickly. Really, the key to this is going to come down to a couple things. Number one, who goes first? Number two, who gets the slightly better, the better draw. And then number three, some of these singleton decisions that players have made, like Anthony Valentine having a transmute. Is that going to make the difference? Can he, for example, transmute up the Time Vault, with a key? Or can he copy his opponent's key? So we'll see who has more pathways to victory. We're going to learn a lot about these decks, but either way, this is going to be a blast.
Absolutely. And we're going to learn a little bit about our players here. So let's take a look. Peter Kaloyan is on shops, of course, as we've said. Played jewel shops hoping for that Oath matchup. Well, it looks like he got his wish. I don't know how many times he played it, but and he says there was more jewel shops in the field than he expected. What would winning mean to him? It would mean a lot. Anthony Valentine. Oh, look at that. SCG Draft Open top 8, NRG Team top 8. It played PO thanks to buddies John and Joe, who were nice enough to loan a copy of the deck. Quite generous, given the format that we're playing in here and the decks in question and their value. Steve, looks like he called out Transmute Artifact overperforming, just as you predicted. We're straight into our match here. It looks like Peter is on the play, and he is starting with some accelerants. Oh, including Mana Crypt. Always a good tactic available to you. Wow, look at this. If Peter has PO to go with this is incredible. 3 mana suggests otherwise.
Yes.
Tinker.
Oh my god.
And Force of Will from Anthony. Let's see if Peter has a response. Looks like no. What is his follow-up? Mana Crypt is such a valuable tactical mana source in these decks. Single-handedly casting the 4 of Grim Monoliths. It is just, in these decks that are mono blue, it is just so much better than the off-color Moxen. It gives Peter so many more options here, but no follow-up, no land.
No land.
Anthony has Workshop into Grim. Into the ring. Wow. Incredibly powerful. So Anthony had turn 1 ring with Force backup here, which when your opponent only had 1 Haymaker on turn 1 is just an incredibly good lineup for him.
But it was a good Haymaker. It was basically counter this or lose, right? I mean,
Agreed. I can't fault Peter for that keep in that play.
No, not at all. Looks like he drew the key, or he would have played it last turn.
Agreed. So. 4 mana.
There's for 4. Oh, man.
Very nice. A very nice bar for Peter.
Advantage bar is back to Peter. I mean, it's very nice. That's basically perfect. Mox Opal is really the critical card with PO in this deck. Because it allows you to have recursive blue, which is the bottleneck when you're playing Mishra's Workshop, Soul Land deck, right? Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So this is where you expect him to be able to go off. He just drew 4 cards, replayed his mana. So it looks like this is going to be generating one. This was a Soaring Mana Vault. What else could this be?
Mana Vault it is. That's a Masterpiece Mana Vault. For the purposes of our audience, that Manifold key is sitting in play, but it's actually represented as face up in his hand. Yeah, now he puts it back in his hand. And the first coveted jewel of the match. Peter draws 3. Still hasn't played a land this game.
Who needs land?
Metamorph, undoubtedly copying said jewel. He'll draw another 3. This is the deck working as intended. You see a tactic here by Peter delaying his land, because I'm sure he has lands in hand, right? He's delaying his land drop as long as humanly possible in order to see if he draws into Academy.
Yes. Yeah, as powerful as Mishra's Workshop is, when you're in this kind of victory spiral, you are looking for one land.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it
Everything
amazing?
else,
Just the texture of this game, how it's been defined by the play draw, right? Peter had a strong turn 1, but not the best. Anthony
yes.
had the ideal response. I mean, ideal short of winning the game, but a strong response in Force of Will plus the ring. And now, just because Peter was on the play, he gets to throw the second punch here.
Exactly. Yes.
He was close to doing this on turn 1. He really was. One more mana source from announcing maybe paradoxical outcome on turn 1.
Yeah, if he'd had, for example, a Mishra's Workshop, he could have done it the other. Well, he still would have been a little bit impinged. He just maybe a soul land.
Blue, but still, yeah, just one thing would have done it. So he opts for Urza's Saga. I'm sure he has choices in hand, but he opts for Urza's Saga as his land drop into another jewel via those monoliths.
Again, we're reaching the point that we mentioned in the first match where you continue to develop, but you get more and more constrained on mana, and you have to sort of there's a moment of truth where you either are able to finally pull out the victory this turn or you have to pass, right?
Exactly. Peter has spent 6 life this turn on Metamorphs, but that's working as intended. And you're right. He keeps towing the line of 3 mana here, right? If he gets one more Mox, there's a Pearl and a PO, then he can start this whole process over again, which is exactly what he's hoping to do here, I would expect. And he's slow rolling a little bit, which tells me either he doesn't have it or he has more than one way to get to it.
So how many cards has he drawn this turn?
Well, there's 5 jewels in play, so that's 12.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's 15. Yeah.
Plus the natural draw. So he's drawn over a quarter of his deck.
Well, and we're not counting the PO that kicked this whole thing off, which was a PO for 4.
One other thing we should mention, the ring does prevent him from just winning straight out, right?
That's true. I mean, he can't do damage to Anthony, but he can still set up things like Key Vault here and
infinite turns.
Yeah, and take turns. It's worth noting that the ring protects Anthony until Anthony's next turn.
That's the issue.
Yeah. What Peter's building toward here is still primarily Key Vault, but the end game would be setting up an insurmountable board state with all your Force of Wills and then just passing the turn with your own ring protection.
Yes, the end game is draw my deck, sculpt my entire hand, basically stack my hand, and probably have Karn the Great Creator in play along with Mycosynth Lattice, so you could do absolutely nothing.
Yes, something along those lines, exactly. That's what he's trying to work toward. Spending a lot of time on this decision. It looks like I'm looking at his hand and I see what looks like Ponder and a couple other artifact mana sources and some lands. He may not have the PO. Am I missing?
I would assume he does not. If he had a PO, he would have snap played it.
There's the ring.
Ring? Wow.
Sure enough. Ring and draw. Well, this may be the end of the line, so to speak, for Peter on this particular turn. Yeah, his body language suggests he's about to go to discard.
Okay, so he's drawn a substantial. I mean, he's necroed. he's necroed for 20 cards.
Yep. Here he is discarding the hand size. Yep.
These decks really do feel like dueling necro decks. The question is, again, as we get back to it, can Anthony give a punch as good as he just took? Right? Because here's the thing: Anthony can't. He has to give a better punch. He cannot pass the turn. He cannot. Right?
Well, but Anthony's in the same position that Peter was just in. Peter is now protected by the ring. So now Anthony's strategy is the same as Peter's just was. He has to build the overwhelming board state, as you said, hopefully ending with infinite turns and Karn and all the other resources in play. But actually, Anthony's start, despite how good the ring is not as good as Peter's was, right? Peter led off with a PO for 4 and hadn't played his land drop. Anthony is in a tough spot here. He plays Urza's Saga.
And a couple triggers here.
Wow, Anthony, all Anthony could do was pass the turn here.
Wow. Okay.
This is fascinating. This is fascinating. You have
Well,
to believe
this
that
shows you
Peter
the
can go off from here.
right. This shows you two things. It shows you the power difference between the jewel and the ring. Like it's not even close. Like the
Mhm.
ring is just incredible. I mean, sorry, the jewel is incredible. The ring can get there, and once it gets there, it takes over. But until it gets there, it's just not quite even close to the same. So, um, we're going to expect Peter to just crush right here. Let's see how he does it. Starting with the ring,
Mhm. Very natural.
little inspiration there.
One mana. Let's see if this is for a key. Nope, Soul Ring. Mana is not Peter's bottleneck right now. But he's being efficient, I guess.
As you must.
Ah, Trinisphere. Now, this is a tactic to limit Anthony's responses on this turn. This is functioning like
Yeah.
defense grid. Now, Anthony has a force of will. We can see it in hand, but he has a decision to make with respect to how he chooses to respond. Yeah, I believe the proper response is to force this because you have to make Peter respect a follow-up force.
I think it's really fascinating, Kevin, how the previous match was the critical tactic from both players was channel effects.
Mm-hmm.
Really, Anthony
Oh,
only.
Karn.
Oh my goodness. Okay. What is he gonna get? Is he just gonna mycosynth lattice here? Is he, he can. Yes, he is. So, Kevin, explain to folks who are unfamiliar with this particular combo what happens
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I mean, I imagine most of our audience knows this already, of course. But Karn disables all of your opponent's activated abilities on artifacts, so none of your opponent's artifacts will have their activated abilities be able to be activated. Mycosynth Lattice turns all permanents on the battlefield into artifacts, and that means that none of Anthony's lands or artifacts have any activatable abilities, and that is enough for Anthony to wrap it up.
The
Wow.
mycosynth lattice prompts concession.
What an incredibly, what an interesting game in that it, there's just a lot of pivot points and inflection points in this mirror match. I mean, we called out a few of them. You know, the interactions of the ring forcing you down a certain set of lines when you're trying to go off. But the bottom line really is just that Peter had that second haymaker, that second PO on his second turn, which kicked the whole thing off. And Anthony just, he didn't have a suitable follow up of his own. His ring didn't get him the right things he needed. It got him a force of will, which is nice, and sometimes, unnecessary evil in this matchup, but it just wasn't enough to seal the deal.
I hate to say it, but it was really important who went first that game.
It's true. It's true. And that's why consistent performance across the Swiss in an enormous event like this is, unfortunately, it's one of the things that rewards good players and good deck selection throughout a tournament, because being on the play in the top 8 is actually one of the prizes you're playing for in this modern day and age.
Both of these players are playing under the shadow of the Black Lotus painting, which has to be a little bit, add a little bit to the pressure if the pressure wasn't enough.
Players resolving mulligans. The body language here suggests that Peter is going down to 6 or fewer. Anthony, yep, holding 7, waiting for Peter's decision. Anthony's on the play this game. Looking at Anthony's hand, triple force of wills, Saga, and I think, is that a Hercules recall?
It does look like a Hercules to
Yeah.
me. No blue, but again, Saga can chain into blue.
Ironically, both players considering a hand with at least no immediate blue. Peter's hand, though, has a path, though. Look at that path. He's got Workshop, Saga, Grim,
His hand,
and a Jewel plus Ancestral Tinker, and that looks like Seagate Restoration.
it's absolutely busted.
It's a
His
very
hand is
powerful hand, yeah. All right, Anthony. Okay, Peter keeps 6. Anthony leads with Saga. I expect
It looks
to see
like
Saga
both
cast that
players
Soul
are
Ring.
probably going to both players are just going to go Saga basically until they can get blue, and then whoever gets blue first is probably going to win this.
Of note, Peter bottomed his Saga. That was the card he chose to put on bottom from his mulligan. Yeah, he favored the Workshop Grim combo because that at least gives him a direct line to Jewel on
Jewel.
turn 2, if not sooner. I didn't quite catch what he drew, though. Let's see how he deploys.
It's going to be critical.
Okay. He's going to play Seagate untapped at the cost of 3 life.
Wow.
He's got fogged sleeves. His inner sleeves are fogged on the back, so it's nearly impossible to see that card. But he values being able to cast this Ancestral here, and it resolves right away. Wow. Peter is rewarded for his boldness here. Undoing his mulligan, but he has to go to discard. He didn't draw another Accelerant.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Interesting. Boldness, somewhat rewarded, but also kind of punished here. This is tricky because Peter, I mean, the speed with which Anthony allowed the Ancestral to resolve might have suggested that he had no force of will, no response.
Right.
Or you could reason that Ancestral is just not the access that Anthony chooses to fight this game.
He knows that what matters is the jewels.
Yep.
That's what has to be countered. That was a great demonstration of restraint on Anthony's part, and I have to say, I don't know that I would have had that much patience, but I applaud Anthony for it. In another sense, though, these dueling hands are threats and answers, right? So Anthony doesn't have any development at the moment, so he has to really be conservative in terms of using how he wants to use those, how he wants to use his answers. But what Anthony's planning to do here with the triple force of will and Hercules is he's got that jewel. So if he can survive this turn, Kevin, he can put a mana crypt into play next turn, cast the jewel, and get off to the races, right?
Totally agree. We see Peter play out his shop immediately into Grim Monolith and a key, which again, Peter, no response from Peter.
This is threatening Tinker for Time Vault right now. If he taps the Grim Monolith, he can Tinker.
Absolutely.
Ooh,
okay. But he's untapping. He's valuing the jewel here.
Man, I think playing Tinker would have been very, very, very tempting.
I agree with you. Another immediate force check for Peter. But Peter has a read, I think, on this game and about how it's going. And I think so far his read has been okay. You see here Anthony pitching. What is he going to pitch? And a superfluous force. I like that pitch because it suggests you don't have another when he actually does. I think it hides. It hides a little bit of tactical availability. And now Peter is bluffing here. He's just
bluffing.
Doing
a very good job of it too.
Oh no, I was wrong. Oh, he has a foil new art force of will I didn't recognize in his hand. My mistake.
And Anthony
spends from Anthony.
Yeah. Did he just have to pitch Tinker or did he pitch Time Walk? I think what did he pitch?
He pitched Tinker.
Oh my god. Are you serious? He had no other blue spell, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god. That means this is advantage bar is back to Anthony. Oh my goodness.
I don't know if I can't recall what Peter's remaining in hand.
Kevin, the pitching of the second force, I think, persuaded Peter that he didn't have another force, so he got a little greedy. He kept the Time Walk instead of Tinker because he thought, oh my god.
I think you're right, Steve. I think Anthony played that gambit well with the triple force hand. Now let's see what he searches. You called it. The Saga gives him access to 6 mana. It depends on what he drew, whether he goes through.
Probably Mana Crypt here. I don't know. What
Lotus.
Lotus. Yeah, he needs to get to the sixth mana. So
yeah. Okay, so he goes through Lotus. It remains to be seen if he drew another mana source this turn. The Lotus is still an excellent play because it allows him to just additional mana, of course, but you have to think that he might have preferred something else if he had access to another land. A permanent mana source is better in the long run. If this 6 mana immediately puts Jewel on the stack, we'll have our answer.
That's what I expect.
Yeah, so
he had 4 cards in a Jewel in his hand, and he used all 4 of them except for the Jewel. So 1 card we don't know.
Yep.
Okay. Time Vault, Tinker, Ancient Tomb, and then is that the blue channel card?
No, that's Displacer Kitten, which is another unique feature of Anthony's deck.
So Anthony can cast the Time Vault here, but do you? I don't think you do. I mean, if your opponent has 4 Metamorphs and he's got a key in play.
He's got six. He's got
Oh,
access to 6 mana, but he's going to choose the Displacer Kitten. That means that all of his non-creature spells will blink that jewel.
oh my goodness.
This is probably
This
game
is
over, actually,
over.
for Peter.
This is
Yeah.
completely over. Yeah.
He
Wow.
announces Tinker, sacrifices Ruby,
Wow.
Kitten blinks Jewel, and Peter has seen enough. Just like that. Wow. Wow. What an excellent set of cards that Anthony drew. The Displacer Kitten proving its worth. Amazing.
I promised our audience this would not be boring, and it has not. Really amazing, though. Kevin, you know what was really decisive? The decisive play of the game was Anthony's restraint from forcing the Ancestral.
I think you're right. I
Because
think
he
you're
was
right.
able to have the
That's
double force for Peter's Jewel, which almost certainly would have just become, I mean, with Time Walk and Tinker in hand, it would have been absurd. He would have drawn 3, all he needed was 1 more mana or 2.
wow. So we're going to get a game 3 here with Peter on the play. And it really does look like Anthony's unique deck construction. I mean, you called out Transmute earlier. He called it out in his player profile, and the kitten there. I mean, proving its worth. Anthony's little tweaks around the edges with this deck construction, I think, are giving him a real advantage.
Unquestionably, and we might see. Hopefully, we see which of these differences make a difference going forward, so that the entire metagame and the player base is learning more and more about this archetype as we proceed.
Looks to me as though Peter's keeping 7. Anthony is going to 6 right now.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I probably would have snap forced that Ancestral.
I'm told that Anthony's actually going to 5 right now. Unfortunate for Anthony. Like it or not, this Jewel Shop's deck is a bit of a critical mass deck, right?
Yes.
Can it explode with light resources? Yes, it's possible, because a workshop Mox, Grim Monolith that does cast a Jewel, but it's still you're kind of trying to assemble 4 to 6 mana plays consistently with this deck, and that's harder to do on 5 hands.
There are some countervailing considerations here. Number one, he's on the draw, so he'll get an additional draw. Number two, it is the case that there are some cards that don't get you to the 6, right? Like if you have 2 Urza Sagas in your opener, you can put 1 back. If you have, one of those one-offs like the Transmute that you can't immediately use, well, he's not hurting on mana. He just has no action from what I saw.
Wow, that's a disappointing hand for Anthony. Wow.
He has
just
the
pulled up
force and no
6 mana sources and 4s.
force and no blue spell, and lots and lots of mana. Can you go to 4? This is really, really tough. So let's think about this for a second.
Oh.
He can keep a 5. He can keep a 5 that can allow him to basically cast a Jewel if he draws it, or certainly a Ring. So
basically every non-land card in his deck is a good top deck with this hand.
He doesn't also have a blue source, so he can't just draw a PO and go off.
Correct. He's keeping the bottom of the force. Yep, the bottom of the force. Recognizing that even if he drew a blue card, he was probably going to need it to serve its primary function instead of defense. Peter with the same exact opening as last game.
Okay.
The Seagate into Ancestral. Let's see if he drew an accelerant to play, so he doesn't have to discard. I see. Well, it looks like Time Vault. There's Mox Ruby. Okay, so he's not going to be going to discard this game.
I would be so nervous to play Time Vault at any point in this match. I'd be terrified.
The Metamorphs are a fantastically interesting tactic for so many reasons. Okay, Mana Vault for Peter and pass. Let's see what Anthony draws. There's the Workshop. Mox Ruby. Mox Emerald.
Draw a Jewel.
There's Grim.
Oh my god, he drew the Jewel off the top.
Oh,
good man.
All right, we'll be back online in a second here. There it is. So the transmute has resolved. The second jewel is in play for Anthony. And here comes the kitten. Can he just go
Oh
off?
my
Black Lotus is
God.
an incredible start. Peter, I believe Peter considered scooping just then. I mean, it's that bad with kitten plus jewel.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter's saying, have you got me? Anthony's saying yes. There's Metamorph.
All facilitated by Transmute Artifact. This is amazing.
It's notable. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Well, it's amazing, right? He kept a hand that had nothing. And he kept the Kevin, he had to keep the right configuration. He
Right.
decided to bottom the Force of Will. He had just enough mana to cast the Jewel, and the Jewel drilled him into Transmute. Transmute, for those of you who don't know, right? It builds in the card that you sacrifice. So he's able to get the next Jewel, and then that Displacer Kitten, and then Metamorph, and here we are, just off to the races. Fantastic.
Congratulations, Anthony. We're going to have to say this deck Kitten Shops.
Yes, exactly. I want to see. So I want to see Transmute Kitten played the rest of into this finals here. So here we go. Anthony has vaulted into the finals. Kevin, we got a backup match before we get there.
That's right. We're going to go to our other semifinal match, which is Oath versus Jewel Shops, as we said. And it will be very, very interesting to see if Brandon Chang on Oath can stop Tom from taking the other top 8 or the other final spot. Here's Tom Basketball also playing Jewel Shops. He was top 8 in this event in 2019. And he was middle school champ this year. That's funny. For you who don't know, middle school is one of the old school variants that's slightly newer than 93, 94. Feels Lotus Petal is an overperformer and slightly more reliable Mox Opal. That's interesting. We'll see if that comes out to play. Whereas Brandon Chang was Team Trios champ in 2019, the Cube champ last year for Legacy, and inventor of Tarmogoyf Belcher. Suspicious, but we'll see. He says that Sarah's Emissary overperformed against Bazaar and Initiative decks, which is that's no surprise to me. I mean, Sarah's Emissary is an incredible haymaker. It won't have the same effect on this matchup, though. Players are already off to the races. Tom leading with Mana Crypt into Shop. And was that pass? Mana Crypt Shop pass? How very interesting. Tom looks like on very low resources. Did Tom mull to 4 or 5? Interesting. He has looks like 2 or 3 cards in hand. That's really unfortunate.
What would be the reason to play the Mana Crypt?
That's a really excellent question. He might, gosh. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you right there about why you would play that Mana Crypt. Looking at Tom's list, he doesn't have Lorien revealed, so he's not holding up to Island Cycle. So, Brandon on Oath, Underground Sea into main phase Mystical Tutor. What it looks like. Curious again about the main phase version of this that suggests that Brandon may have a way to draw into this card right away. It's Force of Will. Another alternate art version, but since that one's face up on the table, I'm able to recognize it slightly better.
Kevin, I just did a peek. Anthony is the only Jewel Shop player in this top 8 to play Displacer Kitten.
Yes. And so far, big advantage for that.
Incredible, really.
All right. As anticipated, Brandon has a way to draw this card, and it's via Gitaxian Probe. And as I feared, Tom looks like he mulliganed to 5 this game. Waiting on that blue mana, and even once he gets it, it's not going to be very good. Brandon has to be kind of ecstatic, I think, to see that collection of cards.
Yeah. Because we've seen, this shop deck can come out of nowhere. So he's not quite there, but you can get a ring, and then a turn later, it's all over. We've seen so many different iterations and evolutions to Mishra's Workshop technology and Vintage. We've seen it in its explosive forms, playing lots of draw 7s and sphere effects. We've seen it in its aggressive form, really around sort of Walking Ballista and Bound Ravager and Hangerback Walker. This, I think, is by far the most explosive version we've ever seen.
Completely agree.
In a combo sense. Um, it's kind of remarkable, actually. And it seems to me, I don't know what your read is, but the key card is the Jewel. I don't think
That's
this
right.
deck would even be remotely the same if that card were somehow restricted.
Completely agree. It can't subsist on the ring alone. So Brandon played Misty Rainforest and passed. Of note, he appears to not have access to Oath of Druids since he didn't put one on the stack that turn. Tom, on the other hand, has drawn a Sensei's Divining up, which results, and he uses Mana Crypt to look with it. Let's see.
I love the fact that Mishra's Workshop is just basically a way to play a one mana spell here.
Tom wasting
Oh,
no
he
time,
must really
drawing with the
like what he
top.
sees. Think Grim
Yeah,
Monolith or something?
another
It
mana
can't be that,
source.
but no.
Ah, Saga.
Ah,
Very nice.
makes
Yep.
sense.
Given that Brandon did not put Oath into play last turn, this gives Tom a realistic chance to come back in this game. We'll see what Brandon's follow up is.
Well, Brandon he had okay. Looks like he's got a flash in hand. Is he
Does
gonna
he
can
have
he play
Flash and
flash here?
Atraxa already?
Yeah. So
He
that's what he's gonna do.
does.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what's about to happen.
Okay.
Okay, so Flash is incredible card. It was the source of a huge debate within Wizards and among the community about how to handle errata, because Flash was the classic case of power level errata. Oh, this is a Thoughtseize instead.
No, that's Vamp Tutor.
Oh, sorry, Vamp
This
Tutor.
this is
Okay,
Vamp on Tom's end step.
Why wouldn't he just Flash?
I think it's because he doesn't have protection for the Flash.
That makes sense.
I
So
mean,
he
yeah, I think his hand was Flash, Atraxa, Force, Vamp. It, I'm not 100% on that, but I think this is a play that Brandon is respecting the fact that he would rather just have that Flash resolve and take a little bit of a slower line. He recognizes that Tom is not applying pressure, and he knows the contents of Tom's hand includes a Force of Will.
yeah, that's true. He's seen the hand. That's why.
Yep.
Thank you. That was a piece of information I was missing. So he's going to be using Ancestral as bait for, and then resolve Flash and then win this game. One other thing I
Probably.
just wanted to mention, Kevin, we saw a very explosive workshop combo deck with Mystic Forge that only existed for like 2 months, and that used Defense Grid. I think this deck is actually possibly better than that one. That one
I
was
think you're right.
really aggressive and disgusting with the Karn and Mystic Forge, but this deck has so much versatility and flexibility with the Force of Wills built in. I like this one a little bit better. Okay, here we go.
Ancestral Recall for Brandon, as you predicted. Now, Tom is considering his response here, and the body language for Brandon suggests that this Ancestral was the Vamp target.
Yes.
We know that it was, but for a slightly different reason than Tom might appreciate. Brandon has already played Blue to Delta as his land for this turn, so he
Looks like
has
he's got
access
a
to Flash Atraxa, and I saw Orchard.
yeah. He's gonna go for it.
Fetching again. I don't see all the cards in Brandon's hand yet, so it's not clear if he found an Oath. He fetches a miscut revised Tropical Island. You always see some fun cards on display here at Vintage Champs and indeed Eternal Weekend as a whole.
That's part of the fun. Beautiful
Mm-hmm.
cards.
Okay, let's see. Orchard, he's got Force of the Will now. Top
He
and
also,
what's that last card? Is it a
I think it's
Boseiju?
show and tell.
No, I think
Oh,
I
I
think the
can't.
far left card in his hand is a Boseiju. Very interesting. Boseiju is a very powerful tactic in this matchup because it's a really excellent response to a Phyrexian Metamorph that's hoping to copy a Jewel, and you can
I
Boseiju the
mean,
Jewel in response.
you can't just sit around here and wait. You've got to go for something, right? And if it's
Totally
countered,
agree.
it's countered. Yeah. The
But
downside,
Brandon's
there's no
under so little
downside.
pressure.
Yeah.
He's under so little pressure here.
Yes.
He could Boseiju this Saga if he really wants to limit Tom's options. I think that's what's happening now.
That's what's happening.
Yep. So, for the benefit of our viewers, in case you don't know, Boseiju can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker, but a non-basic, but it lets you search for a land with a type And these Jewel Shop decks tend to have access to a single island. So this play is not without a tiny drawback. It's not really a stone rain so much as limiting Tom's technical options. But this is a really interesting choice for Brandon because he has seen Tom's hand. He knows that blue mana is one of the things Tom was missing. So this is a very interesting choice. Now, the blue cards that Tom had shown to Brandon included Metamorph and PO, neither of which are any good on this board yet. But you can't shake the notion that he has just expanded Tom's options in a very real way.
Yeah. It's one of those, again, critical decision points. Do you go on offense or defense? And I think I would have been tempted to play the Flash. Not just tempted, irresistibly tempted.
Oh, look
Here we
at
go.
this. Tom drew the Jewel.
Here we go.
See, you're right, Steve. It's so interesting because playing Flash in response to this right now would be an excellent, excellent tactic. And now he's just looking at pitching that Atraxa Force, which is sad.
Got to. I don't think there's a choice. We've seen this is the
This is the titular card.
Mechanism. Yeah, this is the mechanism of this engine. You pull this out, you ripcorded the deck. So he's got to force it.
Oh, wow. He values that Flash Atraxa really highly.
He could also pitch the Flash, honestly. If he has a force.
Shantells can come off the top, yeah. He knows about the Metamorph, so he knew this follow-up play was coming too. As soon as he didn't force the Jewel, it was fairly scripted that this was going to be the next effect, and now there's no reason he should force here.
No.
If he wasn't going to force before. Yep, sure enough. The second Jewel has entered. Tom's off to the races now. Oh, by the way, Black Lotus came off the first Jewel.
Yeah, minor note.
Right. Tom still hasn't played a land this turn, despite having one enter play.
Are we certain that he has a force? I'm not. Do we know that Brandon does have a force, Kevin?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Brandon, because his first tutor this game was for Force of Will. Yeah, that top card there is an alternate art force.
Got it.
So, Ancient Tomb for Tom. Let's see where this leads. 5 mana. This sounds like a ring to me.
Just sickening.
Nope, there's the PO. He also has a ring, it turns out, but it looks like PO is first.
Is he going to force this one? Not that it matters. We can see that Tom has the force in the Seagate Restoration. Okay,
wow.
He's pulling the trigger. I think far too late.
I was going to say, Brandon's he's got to be kicking himself. I mean, this was not the way he wanted this to go.
And he's pitching the Atraxa, so he's holding on to Flash. The Urza Saga, was that at 1? Or did it have 2 on it?
It was at 1.
It was 1. That seems like massively overvaluing the Saga at that point, honestly. I
agree with you. I really do. And this is pre-sideboard, so it's not like... I mean, I think these players should know each other's decks. It's not like Tom had access to his sideboard Grafdigger's Cage, because this is game 1.
It also would have played perfectly for Brandon, because he casts Flash. Tom either forces it or he doesn't. If he doesn't force it, Brandon's going to, stock up. And then if he's still holding the force, if the Flash is countered, he's still holding the force in the Atraxa. Right?
You're totally right.
So he can,
You're totally right.
So
that tactic is amazing. Yeah.
The Flash would have been the line, but this is over. I'll let you narrate what's happened.
Well, PO resolved. Tom has redeployed some of his accelerants into a Jewel. He has other options in hand, so we're looking over Tom's shoulder here. So, Pearl casts Grim with a floating mana. Jewel and Grim cast likely a Metamorph. Yeah, Tom he floated the blue briefly, but he realized he didn't even need to do that. He can wait. It's almost certainly going to produce blue anyway, since that's what this deck does, but now 2 more Moxen came off of that Metamorph / Jewel. I don't know if you caught it, but Tom is building a pile of lands off to the left. There's a small face-down pile of lands. Which is a useful thing to help focus your
Yes.
attention on what matters.
Yes.
Here's another PO picking up. I lost count, but it was 6 or 7
Just
cards. 1,
disgusting.
2, 3,
This,
4,
I mean,
5,
PO
7,
obviously is
8. It
reminiscent
was
of
8.
Mind's Desire back in the day, but this is just so awesomely gross. Oh, there's that Lotus Petal he was talking about.
That's right. Let's see if that overperforms here. Yeah, replaying all the 0 mana. He's got almost all of his Moxen. He's missing, what is he missing? Sapphire. That is from the original 5. He drew Karn. He has Jewel and multiple Metamorphs. He has the Ring, of course.
So the one upside on not scooping here is we get to see some beautiful power get played, paper cards. So he's almost got
Right.
the full set of Moxen, Kevin. He's got the Lotus there too.
That's right. And his Sol Ring. Mana Vault doesn't come out yet, but the Solo Moxen is almost all here. Okay. Karn is on the stack. No response there. What is Tom's follow-up? Yet another PO. For 8 or 9. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep.
Yeah, he's not going to even maximize PO here. He's like, why bother? I'll just leave this Karn in play. At this point, he doesn't need more cards. He might even be just using the PO for mana. Oh, he's got the Sapphire now. Okay,
All right.
ladies and gentlemen, we have all of the Moxen, the original unlimited Moxen. There you
Gang's
go.
all
Boom.
here.
This is not a dealer table. This is not a massive trade. This is actually a game of vintage.
This is not a dealer table. I love it. Although trades like this have possibly happened on the floor this weekend.
I have seen some Twitter posts that, yeah.
All right. So here we go. Tom is reaching for his sideboard. Let's see if the Mycosynth Lattice is the choice. Having trouble locating it. Sure enough.
Boom.
Will Brandon concede? Yes, he will.
Yes, he does. Okay.
Game 1 in the books.
Brandon's sideboard is pretty good here. He's going to bring in 3 Force of Vigor. He's going to bring in, on the play, I imagine he's going to bring in this pair of Thoughtseize. He has a Mind Break Trap, which I think I'd bring in, a Force of Negation, which I think I'd bring in, and he has a Null Rod. So he's got a lot to bring in. A lot to bring in, Kevin. What's he going to sideboard out? Well, I don't know. I think you still got to keep the misstep for the Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Sensei's Top, the 2 keys. So I keep those.
Steve, what do you make of show and tell in this matchup? These Oath decks are structured such that they can reasonably expect in many, many, many matchups that showing in an Atraxa is just superior to what your opponent has. But when you're up against jewel shops and they could just be putting in the 1 ring or or another jewel or a metamorph to copy your Atraxa, I mean, it seems really hazardous.
So it's hard to answer that question. I think one of the things that you have to consider is that Grafdigger's Cage prevents you from playing creatures from your graveyard or library, but doesn't stop you from putting it into play from your hand. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, the show and tell is an anti-Grafdigger's Cage piece of technology, right?
Yep.
So it looks like our players have got their opening hands, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Both players kept on 7, and Brandon has the coveted jewel of this deck, which is Orchard, Mox, Oath. Let's see if he time walks first, though. I think it's a good play to time walk first.
I don't know. It's probably the correct play, but the most value is time walking post Oath.
Totally agree. And Brandon agrees with you. Orchard gave Tom the Spirit as expected. Tom has Force of Will pitching Metamorph. Brandon is stymied, and now Brandon's hand is much weaker because he's holding an Atraxa, Time Walk, and other mana sources.
Yes. And by the way, that's another reason to Time Walk, right? It gives you another chance to draw a counterspell or a Thoughtseize, right? Thoughtseize Oath there would have been very, very good, assuming he brought in those pair of Thoughtseize.
Exactly.
If he draws Thoughtseize, he's going to probably smack his forehead, but...
Hey, we need to talk about Tom's hand here, which he has Mana Crypt and Ruby and Grim and Key. He has no lands. So he's played Mana Crypt into Grim. He's doubtless going to play Ruby into top, unless he fears Mindbreak Trap, but I don't expect that to be a concern. Oh, well, he's tapping the Grim for the top here. He's going to end up deploying all of them anyway. He's got a mana floating. He's almost certain to look with top here, and then he has the ability to top key. Of note that he could preemptively just do the top key trick here and draw one extra card. I think that's possibly what he's debating in his own mind right now. Yep, sure enough. This is draw with top, respond with key to untap the top, spending the 1 mana. There it goes. The top will become untapped. He's allowing Brandon to interject here if he wants, because Tom knows that Brandon has access to Force of Vigor, which would disrupt this play. And there it is. Tom is drawing his top again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both players are in grind mode. Yep. I do not begrudge.
Tom's strongly advantaged.
He is. And Tom has just decided, okay, I've stopped my opponent from going the most nuts thing Oath can do, which is basically turn 1 Mox Orchard Oath. And I've got to just grind out as much card advantage, eke this out here. And he set himself up kind of nicely, right?
Very much so. Yeah, top allows you to grind. If you find a Haymaker right away, it's good. If you got the key, you can play the longer game.
Right, he's got the key. The key facilitates everything here. He's got a lot of mana with this Grim Monolith. If he were to draw, God forbid, a Time Vault, it's all over. And he can keep digging. So the only thing he doesn't have right now is a blue mana. Okay, here we go.
Brandon plays his Time Walk. We don't know what Brandon drew this turn. We haven't looked at his hand yet. We know he has at least 1 more mana source in hand, because we saw that already, plus Atraxa. No follow-up to the Time Walk on this turn. Oh, another land. Gosh.
Yeah, Underground
That's disappointing. His draw this turn is still sitting on the table. He has not deployed it. I'm curious to know how many Okos are still in Brandon's deck post-sideboard. The answer could be any. I would not be surprised by any amount between 0 and 3. There it is, Oko. See, I could tell by Brandon's body language that he almost reached out and turned 3 mana sideways to play Oko right there, and he's still doing it.
Kevin with the read.
Sure enough. So, geez, Steve, what do you Oko here?
This is a question I want to throw back to you.
This is really tough. If you could target the top, but it's just going to spin onto the top, that doesn't accomplish anything. The key, as you said, is so central.
Yes. Yeah, the key is doing the most work here, I feel.
Yeah, with the top options the most.
Yeah, I think I would probably Oko. I think I would. I don't know. I think.
Oh, he didn't. He made a food.
He just made some food. I just don't. I don't like that play at all. Tom's gonna see.
Feels low power. Worth noting, if you give Tom that elk plus the spirit, Oko still doesn't die on the swing back.
No, it's still
you keep Oko around. Yeah. It almost feels like Brandon's planning to win this game without Oath. Like,
is he settling
in?
Right?
Yeah, I know, but is he settling in for a game where he animates his own Pearl and tries to win that way? I just don't know what he's prioritizing, what he's expecting to use Oko for better in the future. We'll see. All right, Tom drew Workshop. Still no blue mana, as you cited before, though we don't know if he's got another accelerant in his hand.
Also, he's so far from being able to do an exchange too, right? So it's not. Right. That doesn't seem to be in the cards. I think I would have just neutered the key.
Ooh, another monolith for Tom. Okay. Not a great draw for Tom.
No.
What's the last thing?
What is the last card? Looks like he's going to play it. He wants to do a okay, he wants to do that.
There's a jewel on top that he was setting up for, but it wasn't in hand yet. So
he's done this all without using the key too.
Right. So. Tom's second guessing himself. He's lost track of how much mana he had. He cast the Grim. That die is sitting there marking a colorless workshop mana.
Right.
He has.
He's gonna have to tap another artifact, I think, right?
Well, I mean, he's got 5 in the Grim and the Mana Crypt, but I think he was deciding if he wanted to use the key.
Yes. And he has decided he does.
Yeah. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. There it is. All right, now
To
the
be
jewel
clear,
is on the
though,
stack.
did he need the key in order to deploy that?
No, absolutely not. He's got that
No.
untapped Mana Crypt sitting right there.
Right.
Yeah.
He could basically be tapped down with the Manifold Key untapped.
That's right.
Now. And then he could just untap the jewel if he wanted the key. Ancestral Recall.
He drew Ancestral.
Yes.
Wow. Pretty good.
Resolves. Two mana floating and an untapped Mana Crypt.
Another Grim.
Okay.
Tom has access to 5 now.
Up to 5. If this is PO or a Metamorph, looks like it's going to be a PO.
That looks like PO. Oh,
no,
never mind. It is a
ring.
ring.
So Brandon, let's talk about Brandon's outs here, because Brandon's got like if this was an ESPN or 538 percentage bar, he's looking at single digits chance to win. I'd say.
I would agree.
Brandon gets
Cage.
Okay, so if one of his outs here is a Force of Vigor, right? That would be useful.
He can elk the ring too, which is a good play.
Yeah. So Brandon needs here, this will be the list of cards he wants to draw. Ancestral Recall would be in the top near the top of the list. Force of Vigor, right?
Flash.
He doesn't have a Traxxas.
No, he does. He has a Traxxas in hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I missed that. So yes, certainly Flash. Show and Tell in that case. Oh, Show and Tell can get through the cage. So Show and Tell, Flash, Ancestral, Force of Vigor. These are all decent draws. So he's got 7-8 cards to keep him in this game. Brainstorm into any one of those would do it.
Of note, Tom did not attack Oko for 1 that turn. Probably not going to amount to anything, but I think that was just an oversight on Tom's part.
I have to say that the play of Okoing the key, I think, looks increasingly like it would have been correct.
Yeah.
You just can't expect that you're going to get that much time. It's too much of a long-term play to generate a food there. Especially if you have a Traxxas, which I did not realize. So I think that's definitively the play I would have made. But
players are trying to get the right colors of dice on things here.
Also, did Tom not attack?
Yeah, I think that was an oversight on his part. What? Oh, okay. So Brandon has elked his food and gone on offense. That was a mistake on Brandon's part. That was a mistake on Brandon's part. Tom had protection that turn from the ring.
Yes.
And so he just gave Tom the opportunity to block there. I think both players made odd choices in that whole exchange. Brandon drew another Oko, and that's why he did the elk play, because now he gets to elk the ring.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but okay. All right.
Yeah, I don't like that attack by Brandon there at all. It's I think in the long run, if he actually gets access to Oath, he's going to wish he hadn't done that attack. But we'll see if the game comes down to that, because I think Tom is still, like it or not, ahead on board, despite the disruptive elements of Oko. What did Tom draw? This looks an awful lot like...
You know what, Kevin?
He's not tapping Workshop, so it's not another jewel.
There's a reason to hold your creature back, because you don't want your opponent to steal your jewel.
Oh, you know what? You're totally right. You're right about that, Steve. So, Tom... Yep, no, you're right. I missed that. I missed the whole interaction with the jewel and the ring. That was the right play. But even better than that is this PO.
Oh my God.
Leaving the
Yes.
cage in play. Doesn't want to tempt fate.
Sick.
Wow.
Sick.
Let's see how many of the artifacts. Oh, and there's the time vault. Now Tom
Yeah,
just
it's all
has to
over.
navigate to see if he can avoid any interaction from Brandon's part. He's got force of will, but no other blue card. Is that what I'm seeing? That's amazing. Of course, he has Black Lotus, so he can still cast that force of will. Brandon
We
has
are
2
going.
cards in hand. Yep, I think this is over.
We're going to see the Jeweled Shop Mirror in the finals. Let's watch this, the denouement here, play out. Tom's got to kick the extra point before the game is called.
That's right. He has to respect force of vigor. He has to respect force of will. Otherwise, there's not many other points of inflection for Brandon here. Brandon does have access to Flusterstorm in his list, but Flusterstorm doesn't profitably interact with this situation.
Congrats and good luck in the finals.
I think
There
Brandon
it is. Brandon extends the hand.
could have put up a bigger fight here for sure. But congratulations getting here, top 4.
Just too
Now,
much
Kevin,
power for that Jewel Shop stack. Jeez.
we're going to have a mirror with these very interesting singletons. I'm super excited to see the finals of the Vintage Championship 2023.
I am right there with you, Steve. I'm really curious to see if we're going to see Transmute and or Cat play a role in the difference here. But we'll be back in just a moment with the finals of our Vintage Championship. Can't wait.